G'day and welcome to Referrals Over Breakfast. It's 5:15 and our drive home business webinar podcast. Got Phil East here today from Profit Improvers, business breakthrough specialist, and our usual host Glenys Gassman from More Customers, More Profits. She's actually in transit at the moment. She's on a plane, so we might have a bit of fun while the cat's away, the mice will play, so to speak. So, in keeping with that, today we've got Virginia Jacobs, and we're going to talk about parties and events. Welcome, Virginia.
Hello, Phil. How are you?
I'm sensational. It's great to be here.
That's great.
Now, just whilst I'm introducing you, you're from Wine Taste Talk, and it's a special wine events and entertainment organisation.
That's
and you've been in hospitality and event space, and your passion and knowledge of wine. You've gained a master's in viticulture. Is that correct?
Yes, and wine technology. So
Oh,
yeah.
no worries. And you bring that to your wine events and.
Yes, I find that a little bit of education people really love, especially if it's done in a very entertaining way as well. They like to learn a little bit while they're being entertained.
Good. Well, you can teach me something right now. Wine technology. What does that encompass?
That's really winemaking. So
Yeah.
all the processes of winemaking, from the picking right through to the bottling and marketing and that type of thing.
Yeah. Cool. So today we're going to get you to go a little bit less technical, but extremely important. Extremely important. And that's about bringing together a successful workplace event that your guests will love. And sometimes it's a bit easy, but it's quite challenging once you start, because there's so many ideas, and sometimes there's no ideas, and there's so many different different views and different likes and tastes, and it's something that I've always steered away from. So hopefully you might be helpful. So I suppose the first place is, where do we start, Virginia?
Well, really, the thing at the moment is, of course, the end of year event. A lot of people are focusing on that. They might have already organised it. They might have been tasked with it by their boss and be in a little bit of a panic. Where are we going? What are we doing?
Yeah.
But there are lots of corporate events that you can run, and they're for lots of different reasons and different aims. So you've got to look at, what is the aim of this event? Is it to entertain? It could be, you want your guests to go away feeling valued, pampered, and positive about your business. So whether they're internal guests, as in your team members, or external guests, clients, people from other parts of the company and other, regions, states, that sort of thing. So what you'll need to look at yourself is, these are the options, some of the options around why you might have an event. So it could be to entertain clients or overseas visitors. It could be as a team reward or incentive. So it could be a sales goals have been achieved, or that you really are trying to reward people and make them feel they're valued.
And I would imagine for like our audience, they're probably the main two is a thank you to a client, or a wooing of a client, and a thank you to staff, or some sort of team building exercise for staff, a bit of a morale booster or a training session or something along those lines. Would that be?
That's correct. And some people too might be involved in organisations, industry organisations, organisations like RoB, and they're also involved in, creating events and managing them. So that can really also be transferred into that space as well.
And also, I suppose there's people that here that might be involved in voluntary organisations.
Yes, yes. Whether it's Scouts or the soccer club or, you know, book club or whatever, there's often little things to be done that, and you can glean information from today.
Yep.
Sometimes
Okay. So my boss has come to me, tapped me on the shoulder and says, Phil, you've got the Christmas party. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got the Christmas party for the clients. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is important, but in some respects I've dodged the bullet because sometimes you get more flack about your Christmas party for the staff. So where do I start?
Where do you start? Okay. So we're looking at, you need to look at the suitability of your event for your clients. You need to look at their interests, tastes, and also cultural backgrounds that can influence what they want to eat, drink, activities, all of those sort of things. Do your homework. Find out if you've got a guest client coming in from somewhere else. Find out a little bit about them so that you can meet their needs. So a couple of popular options. Probably the first one we'll think of is the sit-down dinner. So that is popular for a reason. It's structured. It follows a plan. It's usually not weather dependent. But it is a bit predictable. Sometimes we can do that in a remote location. It could be on a boat, could be out in a paddock, it could be hotel, restaurant, but the more remote locations do require a lot more organisation. The good old cocktail stand-up event can really be quite good. If you want to encourage networking and people from different regions or countries to mix and meet and mingle, but it's not great if you've got long speeches. If you're going to do your performance awards during the night and it's going to be standing up for an hour listening with an empty glass, because wine waiters don't usually wander during the drinks.
Most events with long speeches aren't good.
No,
not much fun.
Exactly,
So that might be something we put on our checklist too. No long speeches.
And look, let's think outside the square a bit. Another thing we can do is have an activity first and then a dinner. So the dinner's not everything. Now, an activity could be, and these things can help break down the barriers a little bit too. So it could be barefoot bowls. Great fun on a summer's evening, something like that. Could be a brewery tour, a winery tasting, anything like that that's going to loosen things up a bit and make people relax and enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
Depending on how many people you've got coming and what sort of atmosphere you want, a dinner with entertainment, music, dancing can be very celebratory. So that's really good for the Christmas events or end of year. Not so good perhaps if you are doing those presentations. The DJ just gets everyone on the dance floor and it's time for the speeches, so we've got to stop it, and it's really hard to build that atmosphere. But you can have everyone walking away having had a great night if they've all, even if they're not dancing, they've enjoyed the music. Another thing people look at is an interactive activity. So that's something we're actually getting people involved. They're doing something and they might be working with people that they don't normally work with. So it has a team building element. I know one particular business, just as an example, that the group goes in and they actually run a restaurant. So they have one day of training and the next day they're running the restaurant. And that's an incredibly great bonding experience. And oftentimes you might have the management team serving the staff. So that's another sort of aspect. In my business, I do a blending exercise where they'll be in groups, but there might be people from different sites of the same company, different departments. So they're all working together. They have to blend the wine, brand it, name it, and come up with a marketing.
Oh, yeah, cool.
To plan for it. So it's putting everybody together. It's using the creative side as well as the tasting side, and also decision making.
Well, it's not every day people get to make their own wine. So.
No, exactly. It's really interesting some of the names that they come up with.
Well, I can imagine, but maybe I can't.
And look, there's sometimes if you're looking at a conference sort of situation, mixed activities are good. Not everybody's into abseiling or skydiving. So one group might like meditation and yoga, and the other group might like mountain bike riding. So be prepared to have some different types of activities and backup plans if the weather turns bad.
So in your experience, how does that go with logistics, or how does it go as an event when you've got segregated groups maybe at different venues, or do you have to look at a venue that does a number of different things?
Look, some of the hotels and resorts will that are good for conferencing. So if you're having an end of year conference and then putting your Christmas party on at the end, some of them might have recreational activities, or there's people you can call in. So there might be somebody that will come in with the bikes, take you out horse riding, you go to the horse riding, all of those sort of things. Depends if you're in the mountains, by the beach, what type of activities you can use. But generally people will come together before and after that as part of a conference. So And look, if you're trying to showcase your region, you can take people for a tour, whether it's a historical site, nature, it could be animal reserve, say like Healesville. If you've got people from overseas, could be, as I said before, wineries, breweries. It just gets people out and about, and that can be followed up with a dinner. And one of the aspects I'd like to talk about as far as the end of year event is family days, especially if you have staff from diverse cultural backgrounds. You might have staff that are different life stages. So you've got some older people, some younger people. You've got the different lifestyles, different family units. There's one thing that brings them all together, and that's family fun. So if you can put, people can bring their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews, their own children, and you put on some fun and activities, and it actually brings people together on what's similar and makes what's different about them just disappear. So it's a really positive reinforcement, team building. Just depends on what type of event you're looking for and the makeup of your team, really.
So what do we go back to the old egg and spoon races and the sack races and that sort of stuff, or in your experience, what's a few things that work in that space with a diverse group?
Going to somewhere that has a park or a children's section, activities, a little miniature railway. You can make up games. You can bring people in, hire a space in a park, bring people in that will cater for the kids. You could bring in pony rides, clowns, all those sort of things. So there's lots of things you can do. And sometimes the jolly old fellow will, climb in the red suit will make an appearance depending on what you want to do. Sometimes it's just fun and food and entertainment. So watching the kids and watching them have fun.
Now you mentioned entertainment, music, dancing, DJs, all this sort of stuff. Now, a lot of the times people are just starting to get into the Christmas party, and it's time to finish. Now, some of that might have to do with what they've been drinking, or it might just be they've been getting a bit more comfortable or whatnot. What's something that we can do to break the ice and get people enjoying themselves right from the get-go?
That's a good question. I think without remembering responsible service of alcohol, but that initial drink as they walk in the door, some sort of mixing, whether if you've got people sitting down at tables, you might have some sort of, the MC could get them to introduce themselves around that table. You can, a lot of corporates will try to have at least one manager or senior person or responsible person on the table that will actually make sure all the introductions happen as well. So you can look at that and make sure that nobody's really left out and that everybody's has someone to talk to and is being engaged. Generally, sometimes people are not as don't enjoy being put on the spot in around people I don't know to do the old icebreaker too much. It's hard enough in a small group.
So they're not all going to get up and do the chicken dance together, or or a bit of
no? Maybe not.
Okay.
We want them to go away with their
that sort of stuff usually does a bit more worse than harm than good sort of thing. Yeah.
We want them to go away with their pride intact.
Okay, no worries. So
I'll touch on a couple of points about planning that people might not have thought of, because some of them are obvious, but it's the old thing, you don't know what you don't know because you don't know it. So, and that's where seasoned event planners understand what can happen and know how to prevent things. But first of all, I mean, you've got your venue selection. We could talk about that for a week, so we'll move on. Pretend you've already got your venue, but you need to think about the food. Firstly, you need to look at cultural and religious and ethical considerations. Perhaps if you've got quite a few vegans at your workplace, you're not going to take them to a steakhouse or something like that. So just thinking about your staff, what their preferences might be, and making sure good restaurants and good hotels can cater for those, and good caterers. They can cater for a broad range of dietary needs. Now, drinks. They can make the party, but they can also be the undoing of a party. So it's good to have a range of alcoholic, low alcoholic, and non-alcoholic beverages. You know, you could have some mocktails, something that's a little bit interesting for the drivers in the group. And it's also good to talk to the venue and your staff about responsible service of alcohol and how the company views intoxication. It is still a workplace event. You don't want to damage a brand. You don't want to have a staff member hurt themselves just because they've had one too many drinks. And also spirits and cocktails can be very dangerous. People can get a little bit greedy when it comes to free cocktails. So perhaps at the beginning you could have cocktail, but then after that it's beer and wine. But, you know, it's individual and according to your particular brief.
Along with your wine making idea, they could maybe make up and name their own cocktail to start off with. Maybe
there's a thought. There's a thought. They'd have fun with that, I'm sure. And also, I think it's worthwhile to make sure there's always some food when the drinks are served. There's nothing worse than there's nothing served and your third drink in before any food comes out. So now you mentioned music and entertainment. It's a good idea to make sure that it's appropriate. Beware the volunteers. I wasn't an organizer, thank goodness, but I was at a charity event fundraiser, and a local band, I'll call them, volunteered their services, but their song choice was not appropriate for a family-friendly event until one of the organisers had to run out and actually pull out their amplifier cord just to get them quiet. So make sure you know what the content's going to be. And the pace is important. You don't want loud music while people are talking over dinner, but you don't want, if you're going to get people up and dancing, they've got to have the right sort of music as well. You can use a reputable agency. They will they will know their bands and they will tell you who's suitable. Sometimes it will talk about decor. Sometimes it's all about branding for the business, for events. So you might want your pull-up banners and AV, displays with your logo everywhere, all the menu, invitation, everything branded. Other times it's more festive. So you might have a theme. It could be, Great Gatsby, it could be Batman, whatever the theme is. And everything should reflect that, right through from the invitation, right through to the placemats, the table settings, the AV presentations. That theme should be carried through. And if it's going to be decorative, that's great. but just use, what is my aim? Remember that question we asked at the beginning, what's the aim of this event? And let that guide you as to whether it should be more corporate branding or festive. Furniture and equipment hire, especially if you go off into a remote location, or you might be using your office space if it's large enough and you need to get some equipment in. Make sure that you check it off as it comes in. Don't wait till the guests are about to arrive to check how many plates you have. That can be a little bit embarrassing. And you test equipment, any electrical equipment, whether it's an urn or a hot food service or AV. Test it in your bump in, which is what we call the setting up phase. Don't wait till someone wants a cup of tea to plug in the urn and find that it blows every fuse in the place. And believe me, it happens. And make sure that you've got the after hours contact for the hire people, so that if there's a problem, you can contact them, and have things like electricians on speed dial. AV requirements, that will vary. It depends how big the space is. You know, a lot of people will have, if you have a big space, I've been to events where there's screens all around the room to relay what the presenters might be saying. And my message there would be test them and then test them again. And if you're not sure, test them again. Check that your computer screens are working, that your presentations are working, that your microphones are working. And many venues have their own teams. Or you can hire a team, an AV team, and if it's a big, important function, I would recommend that. Sometimes with corporate events, we might have partnerships or sponsorship. Have to make sure that's acknowledged, that you usually have predestined touch points throughout the event. It might be AV, it might be mentions, it could be, you know, talking, mentioning the actual company all the time or the people. And it's really important that you follow up and acknowledge sponsorship and thank yous, that type of thing.
Well, just before you go on then, sorry to interrupt, I will mention about a bit of sponsorship, and that is, we're here with Referrals Over Breakfast. We're in South Melbourne and in Ballarat, and for the RoB Academy. So the RoB Academy is all part of the offering at Referrals Over Breakfast, and you probably heard Glennis and I talk about it a lot, and Chris is still driving home there to Ballarat, but there's always plenty of information and event management, getting people to events, marketing, and looking after your staff. All tips like that are in the RoB Academy, and if you can put that together with this checklist that Virginia's building for us, you'll no doubt be able to have a great Christmas event. So sorry to interrupt you, Virginia.
No,
that's sponsors. I thought we'd just give them a bit of a plug there. So
great segue there, Phil. I love your work. So one aspect that people don't always think about, and it just depends who you're inviting, but if you have VIPs, dignitaries, special guests, you've got to think about protocols. You have to know who's in the audience, recognise them in any speeches, programs, etc. Really, really important here. It sounds basic. Make sure you spell their name the correct way, and make sure that any speakers are briefed on pronunciations. There's nothing worse than having somebody stumbling over somebody's difficult name. Remember what I said, we need to make people feel pampered and valued at the beginning. It's all about that ongoing process of that. Now, talked about drink driving and things before, or RSA. A lot of venues or organisations might organise transport. It may be taxi, it could be buses, or having a venue that's central to a town so people can walk to motels, that type of thing.
Cool.
I have been you wanted everyone there in a timely manner. I don't want, I have been to places where people are, all relying on the one local taxi, and it doesn't work. So just try and get that to happen. OH&S, this risk analysis should be part of your planning. A professional event organizer will always have that at hand, or, that's part of their organisation. And that leads me to, when we come talk about risk, weather dependency and alternative plans. So if you're thinking about an outdoor drinks, what's your alternative if it starts to rain or it's windy? I've had outdoor events where it's so windy that the tableware just went smashing off the table.
Yeah.
So you need to have some.
Get your plan B.
Plan B. I love a plan B, Phil. It's the event organizer's favourite thing is the plan B.
Yeah. Cool.
Don't forget any licenses and permits. If you're in a public space, you might need to get a permit from the local authorities, the local council. You might need to apply for a liquor license if it's unlicensed, and you might need to have a few beefy security guys out the front as well. So gifts and giveaways and prizes. Think about things your guests would enjoy. They might be on the table. You might have sponsors that donate those. Make sure they get a recognition.
Yeah. And with those, if people have been listening in to prior ones, and if you haven't heard your prior ones, you can go to YouTube. They're all on there. They are prior drive homes. But you could utilise your joint venture partners to even provide some of those gifts and giveaways and
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
give them a bit of a plug and help keep the costs down for your business.
Exactly. People that you have given business to throughout the year might be able to provide something. It depends. If they sell step ladders, it might not be the best gift, but they might be able to provide something that is acceptable. Yeah. And also you could, going on to printing. You may use a printer that might, you might say, put your logo on there and we'll, do a deal. But they might, your printing creates your atmosphere and it reinforces it, whether it's corporate or whether it's a festive theme. But check and recheck your spelling. Get somebody else to read it. We can never see our own spelling mistakes. There's nothing worse than having a program and it's got the CEO's name spelt incorrectly and somebody notices at the last moment. So that's never a pretty moment when that happens.
All of this stuff that you're just talking about there, there's a fair bit involved, all right? And there's a fair bit to think about. And now that they've got a pretty good checklist to sort of work from, but obviously someone who's going to do this needs a certain set of skills to be able to pull this off. Yeah, would that be right?
Yes.
So their attributes would be.
Well, some people in organisations are natural organisers. They're very well planned organisers. They make lists, they check off lists, they recheck things. They enjoy doing it. They're good communicators. But if you don't have somebody like that in your team, it really is probably worth the time and the money to invest in an event organiser. And you can engage them to do the parts that you don't feel comfortable or the whole thing. And I think if you're trying to impress either your team or your clients, it's worth looking at. Some venues will have their own event organiser that can assist you. Others, especially if you're going to a location, they can help you with sourcing that location, with all the suppliers, all of that type of thing. So there's lots of different alternatives. You can say, here it is, please produce a great event, and they'll go away and do that for you to your brief. So
if I'm organising my next event, and I've got a few of our VIP customers lined up for our next event, at what stage would I get in touch with you?
Early as possible. With someone like myself who does wine tasting events, or anybody else, the earlier the better. If you want to secure someone's services, let them know right at the beginning. And also speaking to a professional can make you really understand what you need to do and what areas, like I've just discussed, what needs to be covered off.
Yeah.
Things that you may not have thought about that will change the way you do your event. It can save you time and money talking to a professional.
Yeah. So if I was going to give you a call, I reckon a lot of that stuff I wouldn't have to necessarily worry about.
No.
I would have to know about it to check with you as to whether or not it's getting taken care of. Would that be right?
No, exactly. Go with someone reputable. Go with someone perhaps that can give you a reference about their previous work, or someone you've been to an event and find out who did that one.
Yep.
Our aim is to make sure that your guests love and talk about your event, that they walk away with a really positive impression of the company, whether they work for the company or whether they're a guest of the company. And that message goes from the first invite to the last dance or drink or speech. Yep. It's about managing that message all the way through.
And just for those listeners, the best way to get a hold of you is email Virginia?
Yes. Virginia at winetastetalk.com.au.
Yep. So that's wine taste talk.
Yep.
3 separate words there, but all in one. .com.au.
That's
very good.
If they'd like to just call me, my mobile is 0408 197 747. Sometimes that initial phone call can really it's a very quick way to get some information across about what you're looking for in your event. It saves a lot of emails, I find, a phone call. You get a feel for what people want, and you get a feel for what you can deliver for them.
Yeah. Now, just got Joan in the chat. So thanks, Joan, for being here. We've also got Jim and Jake on the call there as well. Now, Joan's just got a question around budgeting. And I know that's a bit of a piece of string, but to have a good event, it's not this, like, what's the best way to get you the best bang for your buck?
I think, first of all, have a definite budget. It's a bit like planning anything. You then get pricing on what your different things are, as far as whether it's the food, the venue, the band. You might cost things out and say, this is how much I've got to spend. But then you might start to realize, well, hang on, for that, I'm not going to get a good product. I'm not going to, I might be able to get someone playing the ukulele, which isn't going to go over that well. But you may then say, I'll have to scale back my event, and I might just make it a drinks event, drinks with nibbles, rather than a full-on sit-down banquet. So look at the budget. Don't try and achieve too much with a small budget, because you will only end up in tears, because you won't have the quality that you want.
That's right. So you can have a smaller thing done well, than a bigger thing done. Exactly.
How's
your father?
Yeah.
Very good. So if we can just back over it, Virginia, if we can, there's a lot there and a lot to think about, but our first one to think about is why we're doing it in the first place.
Yes, purpose, aim. What are you trying to achieve? That's really important.
If I've got two goals, can I have an event with 2 goals or 3 goals, or does each event just have to have pretty well 1 goal?
Because as long as you don't confuse the message, it's very difficult sometimes you wouldn't want perhaps to sometimes have entertaining corporate clients and hosting all of your team at the same time. You may find that there's 2 very different groups and they won't mix. And when they do mix, it could end up not having a good reflection on your company. So you have to make sure, if people are really letting their hair down at their Christmas party, do you want your clients to to have to watch that?
That's
Keep
right.
them separate. Keep them separate. You could have, for example, an end of year celebration and have an awards part of that, so that you've got maybe people who have 5, 10, 15 years, people who've achieved training or study throughout the year, people who have, you know, achieved goals that the company set. So you can have a little bit of company rah-rah in there, as well as celebrating, but don't let that dominate the whole evening. It's just a small part of it. You can do those, but just be mindful about your audience and are their interests and tastes going to be the same?
Yeah. Now, Joan's also got another question here, just about a time frame. So to organise a good event and make sure that everything's on the, how long before the event should they start, or what's the minimum? I know the maximum could be whenever, but what's the minimum time you need for?
When it comes to that end of year or even end of financial year, where there might be a bit more pressure on venues, book early. You can always book the venue and then come back to some of the details later. But booking the venue and perhaps a band and or a caterer, if it's a non-catered venue, get the basics done early. And then what you do is a spreadsheet, a timeline of when you need to do things. So, for example, you don't want to send out invitations 2 weeks before. So you might say, okay, 2 months before I'm going to send out my invitations. You might put a save the date out earlier than that, depending on the type of event you've got. But following that timeline and laying out that timeline in a very logical way will make sure that you know you're on time with all of your stages and all of your, you know, little activities that you need to organise. All of your
RSVPs. Where do they?
RSVPs. Make sure you give yourself enough time, because usually the venue will want, or caterer will want, numbers at least a week before, generally. So, and you always get a few people that'll put their hand up. You can usually put the numbers up, but they don't like it if you drop them by 50 on the day before. It's not good.
So should I follow up my invitees with email or a phone call if they haven't RSVP'd, or what happens even after they've RSVP'd? Do we then send them out a reminder, or how do we go about that?
Generally, it depends. If you've sent, which for a formal corporate event, people might actually still go old school and send out a letter, an invitation. Otherwise, it might be an email invitation. Generally, once you've sent that first invitation, it's probably just good to put a friendly reminder in. If you're able to delete the people that have already RSVP'd, delete them from your mailing list for the reminder. That's good, because sometimes, you know, you've already RSVP'd and then you get the reminder and you think, oh gosh, didn't I RSVP to that? So you do it, you know, twice. So it's good to just try and get to the people who you're definitely trying to contact, not the ones that have already RSVP'd. Probably with your internal guests from within the company, you can be a little bit more blunt. Right, I need to know if you bring your partner, But if it's external, you've got to be a little bit more, a little more gentle. And
no worries.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Joan. Excellent questions, and I think hopefully that you're happy with those answers there. Yeah.
And I think with that timeline,
Joan, no more there, so that's excellent. So thanks for that, Virginia.
That's okay. With that timeline, it does depend on the size of the event, obviously, you know, how far out you're going to plan it. But,
all right. So back to our key takeaways. So we had consider your guest list, their needs, and the aim of your event. Plan and check your plan, and then plan again and recheck it.
I wrote here: plan, check, rest, repeat. Yeah. And that's really the way you do it. Don't take someone's word. Well, if you're going to delegate a job, yes, fine, people trust them, but it's really good to make sure that things are done correctly. Yeah.
Yep. Safety.
Yes, it is a workplace event, so accidents and incidents will mean that your event is remembered for all the wrong reasons, not the right reasons. So make sure that your OH&S is covered, that you have a risk management plan. Even for the things like transport is really important. How are people getting home safely, that type of thing.
Very good. And if you don't have the skill set or the time in your office, get someone in who has.
Yes, it will. It will mean that you have a successful event, stress-free, and that the people who are in your team are actually doing their jobs, not doing something that's taking them longer than it would a professional. Yep, definitely.
And the bottom line is, make it fun, have a good time.
Exactly. So as an organizer, there's a lot of these details, but your guests don't need to know about all of those details. They want to, you want them to really go away with your brand, your goals and your successes top of mind. And you want that to last for quite a long time. And so that's why it's so important to make it fun, successful, and be on mission as far as what you're trying to achieve.
Very good. Well, thanks very much for that, Virginia. And I reckon, as I've said, there's a great checklist there, a few ideas, and some great information for people coming into the festive period when we all like to say thank you and have a bit of a rest and get together with each other. And I'm pretty sure people will make it a bit easier.
Hopefully, thank you. I hope that people do enjoy their end of year events, and I think mixing it up from one year to the next is a good idea too. People can get a little bit stale if it's the same old.
Yep, for sure. Now, next week we've got Dr. Jim on, and he is going to talk to us and help us with our networking. Now, I know you're on the line, Jim. Are you able to open up your microphone, or Chris, are you able to do that for Jim or not? I think you're muted there, Jim. Are you able to mute yourself?
It's not like Jim to be so quiet.
I don't think it's by choice. I'm not sure. I can't unmute you either, Jim. Technology.
Can vouch for Jim on his knowledge of networking, though.
I'll get a slap on the wrist. Glennis would have been all over it. But anyway, thanks for being here, Jim. Jim's going to talk to us, as I said, all things networking, the do's and the don'ts, how to get over that little bit of awkwardness you might feel about networking, and the important thing about how to follow up after your networking and get the most out of your effort and your time to get around and get a few new contacts. Do you do a bit of networking, Virginia?
I do, and it's amazing once you realise that the other people in the room are often just as nervous as you might be. It really does take the edge off. You start to, people enjoy when you approach them and ask them about themselves, about what their work, what they do. You learn a little bit, and that's the best way to network, not to stand back. You're there to meet people and learn. So,
excellent. Well, it's I think it's the top of the hour. So
time is everything.
Thanks for joining us on the drive home. Thanks for your company, Virginia. As we said, referrals over breakfast. You find referrals over breakfast on Facebook, and if you want to join, just head to their Facebook page and get all the details from there, or make an inquiry, and we'll see you next week, 5:15 with Jim.
Looking forward to it. I'll see you at the Christmas party.